Hey, my name's Shanshan. I sell art on shanshan.co. Today we're going to review The Batman. So this is a film by Matt Reeves. Time is 2 hours, 55 minutes, so really long here. A lot of these tentpole type of films, they tend to be really long, like almost 3 hours. I'm not sure if I agree with it. I think 2 hours is plenty. Hour and a half is where I really like, but there is a lot of characters in here, so it probably justifies 2 hours. It didn't feel slow at all, so cut-wise it seemed appropriate from an editing standpoint, but do you really need 2 hours and 55 minutes? I don't know. Actors are Robert Pattinson, plays the Batman, Bruce Wayne. Zoe Kravitz plays Selina Kyle. Jeffrey Wright plays Lieutenant Gordan. Colin Farrell plays Oz the Penguin. This is surprising because he's an ugly-looking penguin. Paul Dano plays the Riddler. John Turturro plays Carmin Falcone. So Batman's taking on these various crimes around the city, and he stumbles across this mastermind crime done by a guy called the Riddler, which is a classic Batman foe. And Riddler is slowly killing off some of the police force in Gotham, so it's a very suspicious, why is he killing all these people off? And it turns out there's a rat in the police force, and the Riddler wants Batman to solve the crime. So Batman's looking into all these crimes that the Riddler is uncovering a case, and the Riddler suggests that there's a rat inside of the police force, and so that really perks a lot of questions. Who's a dirty cop within Gotham? Gotham's always a dirty, corrupt city, so it's not uncalled for that the police would be corrupt themselves. Obviously, Gordan isn't corrupt, but then who of his cops is behind this or what have you? So that sets a really interesting pace for the movie, I think. Could be anyone, could be the Penguin, other characters that come out. There's a great multi-layer character story. You got the Catwoman, you have Batman, Bruce Wayne, Penguin, Riddler. I mean, that might seem a little bit too much, but they all play their certain roles and they don't try to compete for the villain status, I think. They play the role when they're called for in the story and that's it. It's not like there's multiple villains at the same time, so I think that was good. But it sets up that mystery of who's the rat behind all of it as well, and who's corrupting the police force. Is it Penguin, Falcone, who knows? I would say the best thing about this movie that was just really stellar, and I haven't seen in a long time, maybe since Dune, was the color grading. Just, mwah. The editing, color grading in this probably Oscar worthy for me. Usually in Hollywood films, they usually have this tacky, like orange-blue background. Like I have a green background right now, and it'll go to orange and purple, and it's kind of tacky. It's fine for this kind of thing, I think, for a film edit, but in a film, you always see kind of orange from one side, blue on the other side, and you always see it off their face, and it's a classic Hollywood thing to give that kind of, I don't know, whatever. They use it for whatever reason, and sometimes they overdo it. Like I think in Bad Boys, they used it a lot with a Miami look with the color, and you'd be like unnatural color all over the place, and you're like, what is that color in there? Like it's the middle of the day and they got pink highlights, and you're like, what the hell is that? You know. Although in Miami you can see some bars that are like that, like Miami Grill is totally like over the top. You're like, it's just a hamburger joint and it looks like some club, you know. That's totally Miami. But yeah, the color grading just mwah. And they had this great dreary landscape of Gotham, really dark, you know, rainy, which is very typical Batman, but you never felt, it's interesting, it's kind of gray and drizzly, I'd say. Other Batman, maybe it's really dark and black, and this is kind of dark when Batman would come out of the shadows, so that was kind of cool. At Penguin's Club, it was really cool as well. They had a club within a club, so you'd have the public club that everyone thought there was, and they have a secret club within a club. And you do have this at some high-level clubs, especially in New York. It's very typical. You might go to a grocery store, and the club's in the back of the grocery store, or something weird like that. And that was because they used to be speakeasies, and so they kind of kept that status because it just sounded cool for people to walk through a grocery store to go to a club, right? So a lot of clubs kind of keep that kind of cool status. I've been to a submarine bar once in Spain. That was super badass in Salamanca. But if you have a special look to a club, it really makes a movie. I think you can say that also in Tarantino's film and Pulp Fiction. You had that 50s bar with all the different stars of the 50s in it, which is super badass. I mean, the same thing here. It's a pretty cool club, I'd say, and that really kind of makes the film for the atmosphere around Penguin. The weird thing too is the guy that plays the Penguin, he had kind of this beef, I guess, or something with the director where the director didn't want him to smoke, and it's like, dude, Penguin always smokes. I know nowadays they're trying to be PC and not have any villains smoke. You know, smoking's bad for you, but so is being overweight, you know. And they never address that. Like, Penguin's definitely fat. It's like, dude, he should be smoking and fat. It's just totally appropriate for the role. It's what, you know, you don't want to have everyone smoking, that's fine, but just have at least one character smoking. I mean, they're bad guys. Like, bad guys always smoke, right? So it's just a little strange to take that out. There's also this a little bit of a competition of who's the worst criminal of all. Is it Penguin? Is it the Riddler? Is it the guy behind the whole thing? So that's kind of interesting because they kind of slowly come to the surface and they just live underneath the surface murky. So that's a really interesting play, I think. The really interesting plot twist, I think, here is they also have a possibility that Bruce Wayne's father is dirty. And that's never done as a plot line before. It's always kind of seen as sacrosanct that his father was the good, great guy in Gotham. And this kind of pokes a little bit of holes in it. And it's definitely fits it within the story that Gotham is corrupt. It's always corrupt. So that definitely fits more and gives a more realistic feel to Bruce Wayne's father. I like the tech of Batman. First, I wasn't totally sold on the car. I was like, the car didn't look like a Batman typical car. But if you think about the tech they used in the film, it was all plausible that Batman could have developed most of his tech himself, or at least subcontracted. You've had other Batmans where they have like a monstrous car and he's using Bruce Wayne's funds, like in some of the films that Christian Bale plays in. I'd say he's the best Batman, of course, but some of the tech just seems outrageous, like they'd have this secret car and no one to know about, or which is always fun to a Batman film that he has all this crazy tech. But this one had kind of a realistic tech feel to it. The only thing that was a little crazy was the contact lenses were cameras. But outside of that, it was all pretty plausible. Like you'd have a jumpsuit, you can free whatever parachute off the top of a building. That's always possible. That he'd have it all on his back kind of seems a little bit implausible, but it's, you know, kind of fits in reality a little bit, so to say. And yeah, I just had a really good feel for some of the Batman tech in here. The car was definitely plausible, like some guy would build it out of his own shop kind of thing, versus, you know, I thought that was more realistic in a way, which kind of gives it a cool feel to Batman. It's interesting too, you kind of have this deep kind of, I don't know, introvert feel to the Batman, which is interesting. I've never seen really like an introvert version to the Batman. Normally he's kind of this charismatic playboy on the side. In this case, he's kind of this introvert and he's kind of withdrawn from life and still kind of soaking in his sorrow of his parents' death still. And so that's kind of an interesting take on the Batman. He's kind of journaling basically his feelings and episodes with the Batman and filming everything and rewatching all the film footage, which is just totally searing his brain. It's all this psychotic thing. It's kind of a nod in a well to Heath Ledger, who played the Joker, that, you know, he played it so well and was so into the part, it kind of led to his suicide later, or his untimely death. So it's kind of a nod a little bit to Heath Ledger in a way. So that was kind of a cool thing as the Batman's kind of losing his mind being the Batman. I don't think that's been done before. Usually it's like he's a tough ass and, you know, Alfred's concerned for him. But in this case, he's kind of like, he's almost losing his mind being the Batman, you know, being the nocturnal Batman, which would make sense because being at night all the time up like that is really bad for your body eventually. So it would definitely wear you down psychologically. So that was kind of an interesting take on the Batman. It's really interesting too because Bruce Wayne is basically almost nonverbal. He's just like, yeah, okay, whatever, guys. Like he has no swift dialogue scenes. And in every other Batman, it's always Bruce Wayne is always kind of the smart, on the fly kind of thinker and charismatic playboy look. And this guy's kind of this withdrawn, rich billionaire. So that's a really interesting take on Bruce Wayne, I would say. The actor said he wasn't really happy with the acting. I would put it up to really the director chose those lines for him to read and then cut it a certain way where it's just you see the looks mostly. And he says 5 words in the whole film probably. But I don't know, it was an interesting idea. I think they tried to, you know, get around a different cut of the Batman, which is interesting. I mean, yeah, I think it was a pretty good Batman. Interesting take, just a really dark version of it. I mean, Batman's always dark, but somehow this came off even darker. I don't know how, but just mostly on the color range, the color range is super beautiful. It really makes that scene sets for the Batman. So I'd encourage you guys to go see it. Probably a collectible if you really like the comic books, DC world. And if you'd like to subscribe, you can subscribe below. And I'll see you in the next movie review. Thanks for watching, guys.